Okay, we are live.
Yes. Well,
Okay, we are live now.
Uh, Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all our esteemed audience for our live lecture today on behalf of the Nehru Science Center, a unit of the National Council of Science Museum, Ministry of Culture, Government of India. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you for our virtual lecture. We have with us today Dr. Ratnasri, the director of the Nehru Planetarium in Delhi, who will be speaking on the topic inching towards the Great Conjunction, a rare celestial spectacle. Before I request my colleague Juma to actually introduce Ratnasri Madam, I would just like to say a few words. For the past 9 months or so, we are all under lockout and, some kind of a stress and things that are going on, including the science centers, the planetariums. Most of us were locked out, and only in the past month or so, it just about opened. Even the students, I'm sure there is some kind of a fatigue that has gone into you, having to learn new lessons in a disruptive manner, trying to learn the lessons over a digital platform. But here is one rarest of the rare opportunity. I'm sure Ratnasri is going to be speaking to you on this, that please do walk out of your room, go to the balconies, just go and find out a place where you can actually have a look at the southwestern sky, to look at this rarest of the rare spectacle that's getting played out in the southwestern sky. Immediately after the sunset, you'll find two extremely important gaseous planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Both of them are inching closer and closer, going towards that D-Day on the 21st of December. So I will not stand between you and Dr. Ratnasri Madam. So I would request my colleague Juma to please give a brief introduction about the speaker. Subsequently, Dr. Ratnasri, please start your narration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We feel honored to have Dr. Ratnasri ma'am with us for delivering today's lecture. I hope you will find them quite interesting. Dr. Ratnasri has obtained her PhD degree in astrophysics from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. Then she went to the USA for a postdoctoral fellow position at the University of Vermont, and returned to India to join as postdoctoral fellow at the Raman Research Institute, Bangalore. At present, she is appointed as the director of Nehru Planetarium, New Delhi. Apart from publishing her research works in reputed journals, she has also authored several books. She is actively involved in different kinds of planetarium programs nowadays. I will not keep you waiting anymore, so let's welcome today's speaker.
Thank you. Kenneth sir and the team from Nehru Science Center, I am very thankful to you that we are doing this collaboration of trying to spread the word about this event which is unfolding right in front of our eyes. In fact, it has been unfolding over the last month or so. And so we are inching towards it, as you said. And I think to those of you who may not be aware of this event, I will suggest that we use some kind of a simulation software. Is my screen share visible, Juma?
Yeah, it is visible. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I would suggest that we all use some kind of those of us who have not looked at the skies and identified these objects. There must be many of you who have already done this and who are already been maybe even measuring the angle between them and who have been imaging them and so on. However, there will be some of us who would want to know where these objects are. As Kenneth sir said, they are towards the southwest. And it's really very easy for us to find where they are as the sun sets in this direction, more or less. Oh, okay. So I am showing you the kind of skies which we normally don't see from cities like Mumbai and Delhi. So let me increase the light pollution in this simulation software So that gets rid of a lot of the stars, unfortunately, which is what happens. And then I hope I've not removed atmosphere. Okay. So in the southwest direction, if we see high up, not high up, sorry, low down, just above the horizon, we see these two objects, Jupiter being much brighter, Saturn much lower in brightness. Now, as it happens, these objects, they are now western horizon, right, just after sunset. So they are quite close to the sun as seen in the sky. So they are actually moving towards having a conjunction with the sun. We'll talk about this term and a little bit of what formally it means when we talk of the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter. But they're close to the sun in the sky. And for a few months before, when we were looking at them, they were opposite to the, yeah. Yeah, is it not visible? It's very dark actually.
I'm seeing it on the screen.
Yeah. So it just shows Jupiter and Saturn there. The rest is all dark for now.
Juma, it is seen on my screen.
I'm just trying to get a little bit of, now you see, it's now I'm closer to sunset. So there's a little bit of brown also in the screen. So this is, these objects are close to the sun now. And for these planets, outer planets, as it happens, when they are close to the sun in the sky, they will tend to be less bright. Jupiter, when it is opposite to the sun in the sky, after its opposition, when you can see it in the eastern sky, it's almost as indecently bright as Venus. So it gets very bright. Now, why is that? If you just draw the orbits, you'll get some idea that when they are in opposition, they're actually, the sun is here and we are here and they are opposite to the sun in the sky. So actually it turns out that they're a little closer to us relative to when they are here, they're outer planets, right? So when they are in conjunction with the sun, they're going to be behind the sun. And so when they're behind the sun in conjunction, they're not as bright. And Jupiter and Venus still, if Jupiter is in conjunction with Venus, you may perhaps all be aware, it will happen only when it is close to the sun, Jupiter, because Venus never moves far away from the sun. If you remember in 2004, when we had the transit of Venus, there was a Jupiter-Venus conjunction in the evening sky, spectacular. Now, Saturn is a planet which is a little further away, so it's quite dim right now. Also, it is in conjunction with the sun, right? So it's relatively dim. But these are the two planets which we see in the sky. This is for the 14th we have. If we were to go back a few dates, we would see them higher up in the sky at sunset, further away from each other. And then as we approach today's date here, we have. So they are quite close to each other in the sky. And as the days are moving, on 17th, actually, moon is going to be close to them. So for anyone who still may have some little bit of doubt which these two objects are, 17th, look out. They will be a little to the right of the moon. Of course, moon will also make them appear less bright. And then they're going closer to each other. On 21st, we will see them like one object. And even the day before, it's a little more than 0.2. Actually, let me say this. On 21st, they are close together. See, when we are saying close, it's not some kilometers or any of those kind of distance units. What we are talking of are angle units. So let's take it when it was a little further away. So when this was Jupiter and Saturn, one line from Saturn and one ray from Jupiter coming into your eye, the angle that it makes, that is the important thing we are talking about, that angle. And compare now moon, if you were to look at from one side, one edge of the moon to other edge of the moon, an angle in your eye. So that's about 0.5 degrees. And so on 21st, this angle between Saturn and Jupiter is going to be less than 0.1 degree. 0.5 degree is the full moon. 0.1 degree is how close they are going to get at the maximum on the 21st. On the 22nd, it's a little more than 0.2, but 21st, 22nd, 23rd, they are closer than about 0.2 degrees in the sky. Now, for a comparison, I'll talk about that a little later. We'll take up other stars. But for now, let's just see what these two are. This may be our naked eye view. It will be useful for you to benchmark if you are able to discern them as two objects. Just like, from far away when a vehicle is coming, it looks like both lights are together. So our eye is not able to resolve them at that time. Here, it may be difficult for a eye to resolve as two objects, but benchmark it in a few days before and then a few days later. See, when is it that they appear as one? That will be a wonderful exercise for everyone to do. So that is one exercise, very simple one, which we can do. And then if we happen to have a pair of binoculars, maybe, then if we look at this object, they may look something like this. Just that there are 2 points of light which are separated out, which we can see. And remember one thing, if we are using any kind of optical aid like this, our field of view is going to get narrowed, and so it's going to be more difficult for you immediately to see that you are actually looking in that direction. With a pair of binoculars, relatively still simpler. Look at the horizon, move up slowly, just start just below where they are and move up slowly. You should be able to find these objects. And then if you use a telescope also, then of course our field of view is getting even narrower. But the amazing aspect of this particular conjunction, what is going to be in a way really life-changingly inspiring to see, is that if you look through the eyepiece of a telescope, you should see this view. Of course, not with all the labels which are here, but we have Jupiter, Jupiter's moons, and actually Io, I think, is going to be in eclipse for quite some time on the 21st. So we will see the other 3 Galilean moons, and depending on our aperture, what we can see there, and we will see Saturn. With a moderate telescope, you will see this, that there are these the moons, they are lined up, and which is again a little bit odd. You don't see this kind of a lineup generally in the sky, and you may just be able to discern the rings of Saturn. That's about it. With a moderate telescope, of course, even closer, better views you get when you image it and add up all the light you are getting, and so on. And then that's not so simple. That's a very challenging thing to do. So this is the view that we will be seeing on that day if we have any kind of aperture. Now, not all of us are going to be able to access telescopes. These are troubling times. Even if there are several around in the country, there are several planetaria, there are amateur astronomers, there are several science centers, and generally we all go all out to give such views to people. But these are difficult times. It may not be possible for any of the planetaria to do this because of the social distancing needs. And however, some of us may be putting it out. I was just having a discussion with Kenneth, sir. They will be definitely putting it out and webcasting it for people to see this view. Suppose you do take a look at this, of course, but you are not having access to a telescope. You have a pair of binoculars, okay, you will get a view like this. Fine, even that will be very interesting. You don't have a pair of binoculars either, you're not able to see any of this. This is the view you are going to get. Naked eye view, where you can benchmark whether you can see Saturn, Jupiter separately, and you please do take a look at them a few days before and even a few days later. But pretty soon they are going to go too low down and too close to the sun to be able to discern. But 22nd, 23rd, maybe 24th, if you are in regions where horizon is not horrible, like in Mumbai or Delhi, you may still see them. In Mumbai, you still have the advantage, maybe over this ocean you can see them. Now, if you don't have this optics to give you better views of this, one is you enjoy viewing them online from wherever it is being webcast. 2, there is something which is possible to do, and there are many of you are actually doing this. Even if you have telescopes, what is possible to do is that you can actually take a measurement of how close Jupiter and Saturn are in some way. You can get the value of the angle between them on the 21st itself, which not even a sophisticated telescope is going to make it that easy for you to do the measurement. Even with a telescope, to actually measure the angle between Jupiter and Saturn requires extra additional instrumentation and so on. But I'm going to suggest something which can be done, and probably, we are almost at the tail end of doing that. But go out today if you have not done this before, and I'm sure many of you have done this because we have been having this activity ongoing for some time. What you do is go and take a look at it a few days before and measure the angle. Measure this angle. How are you going to do this? Again, are you going to need sophisticated equipment to do this? No, there is one very simple equipment, and I'll go to my presentation and talk about this equipment. And this is something called a cross staff or a Jacob staff. And there is an Indian astronomer who has innovated on this. So he used something called a Mana Yantra and a Dhanur Yantra. We'll talk about all of that when I go to my presentation. So this is something which you can make. You just need 2 pieces of sticks or maybe 2 rulers or something like that to make this, and with this instrument directly measure this angle. And the amazing part is that if we, and this is right now over the next few days, the change in this angle is going to be linear. So what happens is that if you have 5-6 data points before 21st comes, so you can actually extrapolate and get the value around 19th, 20th. You cannot probably do much. But if you have data before that, and we can combine maybe everybody who is doing these efforts, we can extrapolate and get the value on the 21st. That seems to me to be really something really worth doing, amazing, because with just handmade instrument, we are going to make a measurement which even a sophisticated telescope people will find it a little tough to do. It can be done. And so we will get that value, even if you are not able to discern it on that day. So let's do that. That would be wonderful to do. So now what I'm going to do is stop this screen share, and I'll try to share my presentation, which shows this instrument. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's my presentation which I wanted to share with you, and it also has a few of the views. So this was, I think, a few days before view. I think this is about today's view perhaps, and then this is yeah, this is the 17th view when moon is closed. This is the view on 21st, and so on. So, and then this is the close-up view, which we already had a look at through the software. By the way, I also do want to mention that if you can get this software, it's free. Many of you must be already having it. It's open source, Stellarium, and there are also apps in your phone with which there are live sky. So you just point it to the sky, and you should be able to identify objects. And so it's not just Jupiter, Saturn, which will be very easy just to look southwest. But once we do this, the exercise which I'm asking you to do, it'll be worthwhile trying it out on other stars also. So it'll be useful for you to be able to identify these objects. Okay, so yeah, so then this is, I'm showing a graph here, a kind of a hockey stick of data points. What is this graph? This is actually theoretically calculated angle between Jupiter and Saturn, if you know their positions. And now by positions, I think I want to talk a little bit about positions. So what happens? There are 3 ways in which you could actually talk of a position of an object in the sky, and that is you see locally. Your eye is the center of your coordinate system, and then you can see the angle above the horizon, and you take an object, drop a perpendicular, and start the direction north and turn eastwards till you come to that point P, and this angle is called azimuth. The altitude is the angular height. So this will pinpoint an object in the sky locally. But local things are not, I mean, if you go to another place, you're going to have different coordinates and so on. They have their uses, but one other way of thinking about objects in the sky is in terms of what I call equatorial coordinates. So think of the Earth, take the equator of the Earth, throw it up into the sky. So that is the celestial equator. And in a way, then the equator becomes our, the center of the Earth becomes center of our coordinate frame. Equator becomes a very important whatever measure in that. So let's say this is the equator and we throw it up into the sky. If we are standing on the equator, it would be horizontal like this. If you are standing on the North Pole, it would be like this. We are standing here somewhere a little north of the equator, so it is tilted to the south in the sky. So if you are any one location, this is the equator. So you can even try to find out against the celestial equator which are the stars. And so by just looking at the stars, you will know this is the celestial equator in the sky. And then there is another kind of an arc in the sky. This is called the ecliptic, which is the annual apparent path of the sun in the sky. So then what happens is that this is the ecliptic. And from any location, the ecliptic orientation will keep changing with time and so on. But the ecliptic meets the equator in 2 points. So these are the equinoxes. This is where the sun is in March and the September equinoxes. And so going along the equator, you can take an object in the sky, drop a perpendicular to the equator. So the angle inscribed in that perpendicular, that is called declination, and the angle along this. Let's not worry too much about all of this. But it is necessary for us to have a little bit of an idea that we can quantify where objects are in the sky in different ways. So one way is when we are doing this along the equator and perpendicular to the equator. One other way is what is important for us here to define a conjunction. And that other way is, instead of going along the equator, suppose we go along the ecliptic and perpendicular to the ecliptic. So these are called longitude, ecliptic longitude and latitude. And whatever the terms, don't worry about the terms. But in this movement along the ecliptic, when that ecliptic longitude of any two objects, Jupiter and Saturn, when they're exactly equal, we call this to be a conjunction. Technically, that will be the conjunction. However, in the sky, although their ecliptic longitude is exactly equal, they may not be exactly just coincident in the sky. Why? Because the orbits in the solar system are not in a plane. There are small angles in the orbits of Jupiter, Saturn, all other objects. If you take the Earth orbit as the tabletop, so there is angles there. Because of that, even though Jupiter and Saturn on the ecliptic, they have the same longitude, they may have small difference in the sky as we see them. They may be above or below that plane. And so in this case, so once we have that conjunction, we see what is the actual angle between the two of them in different conjunctions. So right now we are talking of just one conjunction. So that angle between them, if we have measured it, as you can see here in my presentation, this is a theoretical value. If you know these kind of coordinates of these objects, you can calculate the angle. So this is a theoretically calculated angle. And so this is how it has been changing. I was telling you that it is linear at this stage. So if you have a few data values, we can actually calculate what is here. That's what seems to be very, very thrilling. And we should be able to do that. So these are the angles there. And now, okay, this is just to a little bit, I want to talk about conjunctions in general very quickly. See, when we have the sun at the center of that, whatever our solar system orbits, and we have all these other objects, suppose they are at one time, they're all lined along. So we would call it a grand conjunction. But because of their varying speeds, they go on in different directions. Now, Earth, this is just too fast. I probably need a static picture to say some of the things I wanted to say. And so this is Sun, Earth, and here let's say are two planets. This could be Jupiter, Saturn. But what is happening here? Sun is on one side and the two planets are in the opposite side of the sun as seen in the sky. This is the opposition. So when we have opposition here, from this picture it is very clear. When we have opposition, these two objects are closer to us. When they are in conjunction, when they are here, they are much, much further away. And they being these outer planets, so the distance becomes really large. And Jupiter falls in brightness by about a factor of 2. Saturn, being much further away, falls in brightness by about a factor of 3 when it comes here. So that is what we have here. We may also have conjunctions when they are on this side, which is when they are in opposition. That will be a wonderful thing. And we can even see them up to midnight and so on. And one other very interesting thing is that when it is like this, when the conjunction is when they are at the opposition, what happens is that there is also something called retrograde motion of the planet. So what happens is, because of these different speeds, one of the planets may actually catch up the other object as it goes around. And because of this, planets, if you look at them in the sky normally, you will see that, okay, they are rising and setting. But that motion in the sky is because of Earth spin. But in addition to that, because of the motion, their own motion, moon's motion around the Earth, planet's motion around the sun, and so on, all of these are anti-clockwise. And this results in, if you look at a planet, it's much more discernible with the moon. If you look at the moon and look at stars in the background, over one night you can actually see, with respect to the background, moon has actually moved west to east. Not east to west, but west to east. Similarly, planets also have this motion. So we will see that this motion is called, therefore, this west to east motion is called prograde. Sometimes then it goes east to west, retrograde, and then again west to east, prograde. So planets make loops in the sky because of this. And when there is a conjunction which takes place, when it is there at opposition, actually you have 3 conjunctions within the span of a year. So that will be something really wonderful. The last that happened was, actually I should have used this image for this discussion, which is simpler to do. But the last this happened was in 1682-83 or so. And it was a morning conjunction. So 3 times in the year conjunction took place. And now there are some other periodicities. Maybe if there is time, I'll come back to some of this. That was actually visual for retrograde motion. But let's come to this, because I want to talk about what is it that you can make your own construction. And there are a number of people who have been doing it. We have been giving this call out now for more than about 15 days or so. Number of people have actually done this. It's really wonderful. I'll show some of the images they have submitted. Young people who have done this. You just need two sticks. And in these two sticks, you need to have either this width variable or this length variable, the length from the stick to your eye. And typically in the medieval models, many a time there used to be this stick would be there and this would move along the length. So what happens in this? What happens is against this and against this, if you see two objects, or even, you keep hearing about super moon, right? You can use this very nicely for super moon to see how super is the super moon. Meaning, what is the difference in the angular diameter for that moon compared to another full moon? So this is an instrument which will help you measure that. So this is Samanta Chandrasekhar, 19th century astronomer in the classical Indian tradition, Siddhantic tradition. And he made many handmade instruments. Like this instrument, he called it the Mana Yantra. You can see it is the cross staff with this, that it has these digits which will allow you to measure in the transverse direction. He also made something called a Dhanur Yantra, and this Subhendu Patnaik, he was mentioning this, and I got to know it from him, that using a cross staff like this but stretching it like a dhanush and making angle measurements. So this is a cross staff, and it's easy, and many students are making it, many students and teachers are making it. One stick here and one stick here where you can move this. So this will be your transverse where it is movable, or you move this. And again this, and now we have Jupiter and Saturn very close to each other. So you have to bring this quite close, and you'll need this quite long. And when you have this quite long, what happens? This is a medieval model where you can see how it was attached. This is actually from a museum, this picture, where you can see that our transom or the transversal varying along the length here. The geometry in this is just this. Very simple what we are doing, our Pythagorean triangle here. So we have one arm of our cross staff here, the other arm here, and we have a right angle triangle. So if this is, so our edge of the transom is going to Jupiter here or Saturn here, or if it is inscribing the moon when we want to measure its angular diameter. So this angle 2 theta is its angular diameter. That's it. So to do this, we need simple trigonometry. So if you measure this 2a and b, a by b is tan of theta. So we take tan inverse of a by b, that will give us theta, and twice that is the angle. That's it. And so when this call was given, there have been a number of people who have actually made this. So this was the first one which was sent to me. It is there in my presentation. Now I have a host of pictures I'll show towards the end of people who have made this. So, and then additional instrumentation has been used so that you remove trigonometry and just measure directly angle. And so this is the angle that is going to be measured. One thing that comes about is that if you make it very long, and you have to make it very long because you're going down to 0.1 degree measurement. I'm just checking in case there is any problem in my audio or something, whether I got a message. No. So when you have a very long one, if you take a scale, there will be what is called the lachak. So we can't hold it like that. If you'll see the picture where the medieval instrument is, you'll see that he's holding it against his eye and using the hand to steady it and so on. So, but I mean, quite good observations were made with this, starting from those medieval times. And okay, so you take something which is a little rigid. We took a kind of a cardboard roll, and with that we got it quite rigid. And then you need something where you will have to move the transversal, and it is going to come to, I mean, if you have a short length, then it's going to come to less than an mm when it comes to 0.1. So you need to increase this. So this was our attempt done during super moons actually. So this works wonderfully. And now once you have gone to all this trouble of making this, I would suggest, and this is to all of you also who have already made this and made measurements, use this once this conjunction is over and benchmark all the 7 stars of Saptarishi, all the mutual angles. This is one very nice amateur astronomy project which can be done. See what is the best you can do with these angles. And here, even if you have a shorter arm, it will be all right. I mean, it's not, longer will always be better, but you can make these measurements. And that will be lovely. I hope all the Samanta Chandrasekhar Challenge students are going to do this. And that, okay, I will talk about that a little later. And one more thing you can do to benchmark in this Saptarishi. You can see Kritu, Pula, Pulaste, Atri, Angiras, Vashishta, Marichi. And their English names are also given here. And this one, Mizar or Vashishta, there is a companion star to it. Alkar or Arundhati. And this is generally used as a benchmark for your how you are able to discern close objects in the sky. These are about 0.2 degrees. So you can try any day to look up and see whether you are able to see Arundhati Nakshatra from your location. And then closer than that is going to be Jupiter, Saturn. But about that in some of the other days. So this is the Mizar Alkar pair, which you can see through a binoculars. And now I have discussed all of this, but I did not mention that there was a call given out by the Public Outreach Education Committee, Astronomical Society of India, and we did some benchmarking for it. And and then there is a large collaboration, and in fact, the Nehru Science Center is also part of the collaboration, where we have given out a call to students. Anybody interested, make this instrument. We are calling this Samantha Chandrasekhar Challenge. And any of you who would like to today, starting today, do this, send your results to samanthachallenge@gmail.com. There is also a WhatsApp group, and maybe we'll put out the link for that. So that's about it, I think, that I wanted to discuss mainly. I left out a few things. Perhaps if there are some questions or so, after that, I will go back to what I left out.
Maybe you can show some of the images and the readings that the students have managed to get in this challenge.
Yes, I will do that. So let me just see how I am going to remove this. Oh, all right. Yeah, let me just come to this, remove my screen share for now, and I'll start another screen share wherein I can show some of the images by the participants who are, I think I have to do entire screen share. It may look a little odd for a while. Please bear with that. So I'll just go to this. So I have actually put together the images which have been shared by many of the Samantha Chandrasekhar Challenge participants. And so here are some of the constructions which are there, which have come. Maybe I may have a couple of ones still left out here. So, okay, I just put them all in one folder. So we can see that there has been tremendous amount of enthusiasm by various people around in the country, young students and teachers, mentors, and all of them. And they have done quite a bit of innovations as well. And so also how to make it more stable and sturdy, and how to make it easier with direct angle reading, and so on. And there have been quite a lot of observations which have been submitted. Let me just see. Yeah. So this is the Samantha Challenge at Gmail. So quite a lot of observations have been submitted for this. And let's see. And the idea is that we will use each of this. This is from the Nehru Science Center. And so here we have the setup on a tripod here. If wherever it is possible, it will be good to do it on a tripod. If not, one will have to do the handheld one. The first time I did one with handheld, and I did get about 6 arc. No, that was probably with the stand. Anyway, I'll take a look at my own observations later. But here are some of the observations. Let's take a look at. As you can see, there are quite a number of observations which have been submitted for this, and so student one first submitted also a view of the sky with the cross staff and so on. So there are quite a few of these which have been submitted. You can see that. So by submitting it in a Google document, you can go on adding to your data, and so by the time of the conjunction, we'll have it. This view probably is not very clear, but this is where the cross staff, that's probably clearer in my photograph, and a few others have submitted it, where the cross staff and view of the planet can be seen against. So those of you who wish to do it, please do submit such views as well. And if you're one thing, I'll use this to caution about some of the things that you have to do to make sure you have an accurate observation. So you see, if you think of the triangle which gave us the original geometry, so this is your line of sight. Your eye is along this line. So your center point of this should be aligned with it. And your two slats should be placed equidistant from it in order for that right angle triangle. If you don't place it equidistant, there has to be alternate geometry which can be used. But for this, so take care. And then some people have actually submitted where through a hole here Jupiter is visible, but Saturn visibility may be more difficult. One way which we have been doing is just observing them against this edge. So observe and then make sure that this line is parallel to Jupiter Saturn line. So this will mean that the longitudinal that you place here should have the ability to rotate, and so it has to rotate and make your transverse parallel to the Jupiter Saturn line. So you have to take care of all of this. And amazingly, actually, there are wonderful observations which have been submitted, and we actually have a WhatsApp group. And there is the WhatsApp group, and there's tremendous amount of activity, many discussions. There are also some young students who have done some simulations of these orbits. They're showing that, and so there's a lot of enthusiasm here. So this is what I just wanted to tell you. This hockey stick is what we want to reproduce. If you take a look at the theoretical data, actually I didn't want to quite share the theoretical data with everyone, but now we are coming quite close. Today is 15th. So we are already about 0.75 degrees, and then it is closing in. And if you'll see, it is on the 21st, 22nd and 23rd that it is still less than 0.2, meaning closer than Mizar Alka, about that. So that is where we can try and benchmark these our naked eye observations. So probably I think I'll stop my screen share here. And if there are any questions, etc. Was my screen share there at that time? Yeah. Okay. I've stopped the screen share, and I don't have my instrument here. I've kept it at home where I'm observing it from.
Is there any question? Just check up.
And then if I go back to my presentation, I did want to talk a little bit about other kinds of conjunctions, the opposition conjunctions and so on. I left out talking about it at that time. And so as questions maybe are warming up, I will go back to that.
Yeah, we still have some time.
So I'll just go back to that. As such, this is just one conjunction, two objects in the sky coming together. So one may think that there isn't all that much of complexity in it, but there seems to be tremendous amount of complexity to celebrate, really. So this is from a website of Rice University, P. Hartigan. I have taken the visualizations from that. And so this is talking in detail about the series of conjunctions which may happen between Jupiter and Saturn. So if we take off, let's say, one conjunction here, this is a conjunction which is actually taking place, let's say, at opposition. So if this is one conjunction which is taking place, because Jupiter has an orbit about 12 years, I'm just giving rough, and Saturn has about 30 years or so. So we have to look at a kind of an LCM of this for them to come together again, because they will very quickly move out of phase, right? Like in this picture, very soon they may be in conjunction, but they will move out of phase. And so 20 years later, the next conjunction would take place. And at this time, presumably, then if the Earth were to be here, it would be in conjunction with the Sun. If the Earth were to be here, it would be opposition. And it seems like there's a kind of a cycle where both are possible. So over a period of 3 years, roughly, it comes back here. But over a period of 6 years, we have a repetition in such a way that whether it is one with opposition or one with conjunction, is it going to be a morning one? Is it going to be an evening? Morning, evening are, of course, the one where they are in conjunction with the Sun. And the midnight ones are where they are in opposition to the Sun. And so this kind of a cycle keeps repeating. And okay, so this was the one where we have, I already talked about this actually, the fact that when you have these in opposition, one of them catches up with the other object and you see a kind of a retrograde motion in the sky. And though not always, but this kind of retrograde motion could result that within a span of a year, in opposition, you may have Jupiter-Saturn conjunction thrice, or it maybe twice. If, it just glancingly it goes off. So this kind of conjunction, if we see, okay, we may also go back to our software if there is a little time. If we see this kind of conjunction took place, the last when it was this close was 1682-83, when there was this kind of a triple conjunction. And then in 1626, there was a conjunction which was like ours, where we have it in conjunction with the sun too, and we have about 6 arc minutes back in 1626. If there is a little time, I would like to just show that where we can go back to stellarium, and that's really, you know what, whenever we want any interesting things to observe, we will find, oh, in history we had wonderful, I mean, they were really truly just far too exciting. So if we go back, I think it was the year 1226, but I have now is the stellarium visible? Do I have
Visible, yeah.
just
Visible.
a few minutes? I'll just-
1623 you can try.
no, I wanted to show this one. It was 1226 actually.
26,
I remember I checked it, and I think the month was 3. So let me go, and the date was 4. I hope I remember it right. I was just checking it out a while ago, and let's look at the sky. And oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so are we seeing Saturn anywhere? Probably it is a morning conjunction. So let's take a look at the morning. Then we have to go to the east. Where am I? Yeah, probably closer to 4 or 5 or so. Yeah. So I'm sure there are many people like me. Whenever I look at these historical and things, I just regret so much I was not born at that time. So this was a morning conjunction, Jupiter and Saturn. And let me just change the dates a little. Yeah, you'll see that there was a time when all the three were there. Venus, Jupiter, Saturn. Spectacular it would have had been. And the conjunction itself was also very close, 2 arc minutes. So once Venus moves away a little, they actually go into conjunction, and it was a 2 arc minute conjunction. So it will be worthwhile really, because this would be totally naked eye event, right? So around 1226, to do a little bit of historical search to see what people would have had seen this. I'm sure they would have commented on it. So both anywhere outside in the West or in India, literature, it would be interesting to see, because this was purely naked eye event, except that people had to get up early morning. So those who were doing Sandhya Vandana or whatever morning thing, worshipping the sun, maybe they would have had seen it. So this is one event. And then of course the 1683 one was probably not that exciting, because it was very low down on the horizon. And the 1626 was closer, but I don't recollect the date. So if you have this kind of
26 July, I think. Just see 1626, 26 July, if I'm not wrong.
Okay, I'll do that. 1626.
26 July.
All right. So now let's
Time I don't know.
the whole sky. So it may be evening or it may be morning. So this is morning. So let's just go back. It doesn't look like a morning one. So maybe then it is an evening one. Let's just see. Yeah. It should looks like an evening one. So once again, okay, so they are a little far, but probably if we play around with the dates or the months, we will get them to be close by. But the 16, is this 1626? Yeah, this was reasonably close. So how are they moving? Yeah, Jupiter. Looks like Venus had a very good conjunction with them. But maybe we have got the date, we may have got the date a little, but it looks like Jupiter and Saturn are headed to a conjunction here. And the 1626 one, I have the data somewhere. The 1626 one was quite close. Let me just check. I don't know if I'm sharing my screen, but 1620, the 1226 was 2 arc minutes, and the 1623, 5.2 arc minutes. 1623. So, and 1623, 16:07. So there we will get it. Again, it was a close one. 16:07. This is 16. And so that's about it. And again, maybe it was a morning one. So if we take it to a morning, all right, I still don't see. Maybe I've got something off here. Yeah, I've got something off there. But anyway, this is the way we can actually look up historical events, and there is a thrill in doing this. 1623, it is 16:07. I seem to have put 17:07, but that's because of. All right, we can explore this, and maybe the dates here. I found couple of things were a little off in this, so maybe we've got the date a little off. But these are the kind of things that happen. It's a rare event. The next one is going to take place. The next one is, I think, 2080. 2080 that this is going to take place, and that one also is a little closer. So these are rare events, and it's nice that this is happening in when we are able to see. Unfortunately, being the pandemic time, we may not be able to do as much physically, but on your own you can make this construction of a cross staff. Because as I was saying, that I would like to come back to it at the end. Even if you don't have any sophisticated equipment, with this simple 2 pieces of sticks, but if you do it very carefully, that is one of the lessons we learn from many of the greats like Tycho Brahe or Samanta Chandrasekhar and Jay Singh, who built these gigantic instruments for accuracy. That's what, of course, now if you look at modern day instruments, these angles, you are going to milli and then micro arcseconds, and then, the kind of optics which is coming in, there is the 30-meter telescope which is coming in. And so those are the kind of close, but those are highly sophisticated equipment. So we can, maybe we work as astronomers there, or we work as outreach people there. But we alone cannot build that. But on your own, you can build this very simple equipment and try and reach an arc minute of accuracy. 6 arc minutes is about what people are arriving at relatively easily. But try and arrive at 1 arc minute, which is Tycho's accuracy, but with gigantic stable instruments. So with a handheld or instrument or so, or with a little bit of extra modern support like this, camera tripods and so on, you can achieve arc minute accuracy and be the Tycho and the Samanta Chandrasekhar of this challenge. So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, ma'am. Juma, are there any questions? Okay, I think there is one.
Yes, please. All right. Altitude and azimuth are kind of coordinates which you use. These are local coordinates. As I was saying, in these kind of coordinates, your eye is the center of your framework. See, what happens is that when we are looking at sky, when we are talking of positional astronomy, positions in the sky, we are kind of treating as if all objects are at one distance. And you'll know that then you need only 2 coordinates, 2 angle coordinates. Of course, modern astronomers will not forgive you if you do that. However, positions in the sky, just in the sky, can be defined by those 2 angles. You also have the distance along the line of sight, which is a very important other data point. But in this context, it's only these 2 angles that you need. And so in the local coordinate system, these 2 angles are called altitude and azimuth. So altitude is going to be, you take an object, let's say the moon is there in the sky. All right. So from the moon, you kind of drop a perpendicular. So you can make a triangle from the center of the moon to your eye and to the horizon, and that's a right angle triangle. So the angle inside this right angle triangle is the altitude. You use the same thing when you try to measure heights of trees and buildings and so on, simple trigonometry to measure heights. The same thing you can take over to the sky. Azimuth is you take the moon, drop a perpendicular P, then you start in the direction north and move eastwards till you come to this point P. So this angle is called azimuth. So if you have altitude and azimuth, these 2 angles, you are able to pinpoint locally in your local sky where is an object in the sky. If you ever go to Delhi or Jaipur, there are instruments there called Ramyantra. Ramyantra is precisely built as a cylindrical instrument to measure this altitude and azimuth. So the Delhi Ramyantra is the largest, and again, it is possible to do down to 0.1 degree, 6 arc minute kind of accuracies with that gigantic instrument, using again simple trigonometry or just arc lengths. So that's altitude and azimuth. And as maybe some other question is coming in, I just wanted to also mention, we talked of all this, the time reaching to the conjunction, but of course the most important aspect is the conjunction itself. And but you see how best to have your experience with it. If you have access to some optics, wonderful. If not, look at it with your naked eye, just benchmark it for a few days before and later to whether how you can see it, and maybe do these angle measurements.
Juma, maybe one more question before you end.
Yeah, very good. Very good. That was very useful question. Actually, today also you go out in the evening, you will see Jupiter and Saturn, and they have been visible for quite some time. Now they will be southwest direction. So just find out the southwest direction, and just above low there you will see the brighter object will be Jupiter, and above that to the left will be Saturn. And keep looking at them every day. In the evening after sunset, they are going to come closer and closer. So on 21st, you have a small window open to observe this. Immediately after sunset, you locate these objects in the southwest, and in an hour or so they will actually go too low down to observe. So this is about the time. The actual physical movement when they are closest need not be this time, but for us to observe this is the only time available. The actual physical movement of closest will be at one time, and I think it is just a few hours before this. But the closest that we will see is going to be when they are visible. Now, if you are using sophisticated telescopes and so on, then of course you don't need me to tell you this, but you may be even able to locate them before sunset and start observing them at that time.
Yeah, Juma, any other question, or will? Okay, I think it looks like we come to an end, because 1 hour is what we had told, 4 to 5 p.m., and we're just about reaching 5. The one best message what Dr. Ratnasri told all our audience is that build your own crosstalk. When our own ancestors could do that, I'm sure you will also be able to do that. And one more interesting thing is trigonometry. Most of the students perhaps learn from rote learning, but trigonometry perhaps can be used in this way, in practical way. That is the best opportunity for you to join that club. Incidentally, the Nehru Science Center is also conducting one workshop on the 16th. So those of you who want to do this, please do join us. Let me also tell you that the whole of India, including the Mount Everest, was surveyed using the trigonometric survey. Basically,
Right.
just the ordinary trigonometry that Dr. Ratnasri talked about, the length and between the two things, and then angle theta there, automatically you will come to know how close are these two planets. So with this, again, I would like to thank Dr. Ratnasri on behalf of all our esteemed audience, and wishing you all the very best. Please start looking at the southwest sky every day from now on, maybe till 22nd or 23rd. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me to talk here, and I was very happy to do this interaction.